that song. Hey, here we are now. I'll entertain you. Welcome back. The Obama administration is sending out some mixed signals on how terrified we should be of terrorism. Here's Secretary of State John Kerry from yesterday.
Despite ISIL, despite the visible killings that you see and how horrific they are, we are actually living in a period of less daily threat to Americans and to people in the world than normally, less deaths, less violent deaths today than through the last century.
Oh, that is such great news. I'm so happy to hear that. Woo! I can let go of my prescription for Lexapro. But today, we hear from James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence. Not good.
When the final accounting is done, 2014 will have been the most lethal year for global terrorism in the 45 years such data has been compiled.
Looks like I better double the dosage. All right, who do we have to talk to tonight? Kay Melcher. She is a writer at National Review and a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. Will Ron is here, senior editor at the Daily Beast. And Steve Laser, a man so focused, a Democratic strategist and radio host of Making Sense with Steve Laser. All right, Steve, I will go to you first. How can it be that we're living in the safest time in all of humanity, yet 2014 was the most dangerous year on record?
Well, you know, I have to say, if you listen to their statements very carefully, Kerry's and Clapper's, they're not completely contradictory. Kerry was saying that it's safer now for Americans at any time. I think that's true. I mean, there's so many additional security measures here in the United States. People traveling to this country who are not Americans, they get fingerprinted. You have the NSA listening to people's, well, looking at the metadata of people's calls and emails and things like that. So I think Americans are safer than ever. I don't think you're going to see, for instance, an attack on the scale of 9/11 anytime in the future. But
how do you know that?
Well,
how do you know that? I mean, I hope to God you're right. I fear that something is in the works always that is so much more horrific. And I think that's what keeps people like me up at night is, oh my gosh, like there could be something so much worse.
Well, I'll tell you why I think that. Without being able to exercise any type of command and control, via email, via phone calls, anything like that, you can't do that right now.
I want to bring in these people so they don't sit here.
Sure. I completely disagree with you. I mean, I think if you listen to what they're saying, well, you know, the world is pretty safe compared to the last century. Like, the last century is not a great standard. I think if you look at a different time frame, I mean, I had a lot of problems with Bush's foreign policy, thought he made mistakes. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to argue that the world is safer now under Obama than it was under Bush.
What do you think, Will Ron?
So John Kerry actually does have kind of a point here, which is that the world is objectively safer than it has been for the vast majority of human history. There are fewer wars, there are fewer deaths, there's fewer genocide, there's fewer,
we don't quarter like we
but that's actually
Iron Maiden.
But these are the rules of history. I mean, history is genocide and constant warfare and conflict and ethnic cleansing and all of these awful things. The world, when you look at it, I mean, crime rates are dropping across really the entire Western world still now for 20 years. You know, we look at the Ukraine, we look at the horrible thing that's happened in the Middle East.
Just making this claim?
No. It's a different thing. I mean, we have to, as Steve said, we have to factor in the Americans right now. Yes, the world is safer than it's ever been, while at the same time, yes, a brutal caliphate is being established in the Middle East. However, that caliphate has not shown a particular interest in attacking the United States proper. So,
well, I hope you're all right. According to the Washington Examiner, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives wants to ban 5.56 millimeter ammunition. Gun advocates claim because the Obama administration hasn't been able to ban AR-15 semi-automatic rifles, it's going to go after the ammunition they use instead on the grounds that they're armor-piercing, a threat to police, and bullets aren't covered in the Second Amendment. Now, Steve, you were in the Air Force. You've actually shot guns. How much malarkey nonsense is this?
I've actually fired 5.56 millimeters, which we're talking about here, that type of ammunition. I think it makes sense to take any type of bullets that can penetrate police vests out of the circulation for the general public. I don't think there's any reason that people have to fire that type of ammunition. And in fact, you know, I've seen police argue both sides of this. The argument that the police have that are against banning these weapons is that they don't think people would spend $1,000 to buy the type of weapons
pistol
that would fire these.
Yeah.
I
agree
think
with that.
That's a tough assumption on which to bet the safety of police officers.
Absolutely not. And I think that's because the bet has already been made. If you look at it statistically, I can't find one example of a police officer that's been killed by a .556 bullet. And on top of that, we're talking about bullets for rifles. Rifles account for 2.5% of homicides, and that's not even narrowing it down to the caliber.
Well, before 2001, we didn't have that many people who had been ever killed in a domestic terrorism incident. And in 1998, we had a study that showed that we need to improve airline security. A lot of folks said the same thing that you're just saying now about that we didn't have a realistic threat of terrorism. It's too late to do it after it's already happened. After a whole bunch of police have been killed with these armor-piercing weapons, it's too late.
Well, there are a lot of people who use these green tips. Will, I mean, you're a recreational hunter. I know you spent a lot of time in the wilderness, obviously. What do you think about this?
I think the politics of it make this unlikely for the White House to move forward on. I think every time that they move forward with a big gun control push, it always seems to blow up in their faces. I mean, after Sandy Hook, they could not actually get a bill through Congress.
Yeah, and that's when pretty much everyone was like, whoa, maybe
yes, exactly. If there
was
was any moment, the power of the NRA and the gun lobby is such that, and it's like this all over the country. I mean, you look at the state laws on guns that are just getting repealed left and right. Also, if they ban this ammunition, it's hard to think that they would actually be able to ban the ammunition. There's enough of it already out there.
Yeah. Wink, wink. All right. Well, Julian, Will, and Steve Lather, you guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Kennedy.
Fine discussion always. Coming up next, comedian